friends, and welcome to Sustainable Prepping, your home for fear-free emergency preparedness and sustainable life. My name is Brecky, and today we are talking about, can you be a prepper if you're not a homesteader? If you're new here, I want to say a great big welcome. The channel has been growing, so I know that there's a lot of new faces. Hello, welcome to this slice of the internet. If you're not new here, I want to say a great big welcome back. I would not be able to make any of these videos happen without all of you here encouraging me and creating a wonderful community of sustainable-minded, progressive folks in the emergency preparedness community. I love it. Today we are talking about whether or not you can be a prepper if you're not a homesteader. Lately in the emergency preparedness community, I've seen a huge push towards becoming homesteaders or self-sufficient or self-reliant. These terms get used a lot. The idea being that there are systems in place that we rely upon and take for granted now, but they're not going to always be there. The less reliant we are on these systems, the better off we're going to be when they eventually break down. So how do you prepare for a breakdown in these systems? Well, you begin to become a producer of your basic needs: food, shelter, clothing, your electricity and power, all of those things. The more that you can control and the more that you can produce, the less tied to a faulty infrastructure you are. And homesteading is the natural conclusion to this form of prepping. But do you have to get into homesteading, like living off-grid, raising all of your own food, so on and so forth, to be an emergency preparedness person? The answer is no, but it is the logical conclusion. You can absolutely have your emergency preparedness plans in place and never plant a garden, never have chickens, never be off-grid. In fact, most preppers of the last 30 some years have been that way. They live in suburban areas, they don't necessarily have gardens or substantial enough gardens to really make an impact on their caloric needs, and they have their basement full of rice and beans and so on and so forth. But this idea is shifting. Why just survive the zombie apocalypse when you can be thriving in an off-grid community? Additionally, the more people begin to see how fragile our global food system and other systems are, the need to create your own localized systems becomes more apparent. Now, if we look at the flip side, are all homesteaders preppers? The answer is not exactly, but kind of. By virtue of being a producer of your needs rather than just a consumer, you are insulated from a lot of the problems that those of us totally dependent upon the system have. For example, if a homesteader is able to grow 50 to 60% of their calories, they're not going to be as reliant on a system that might fall apart, right? They can just plant more things, grow more animals, harvest more, whatever, to meet their needs. If you are living off-grid, who cares if the power grid goes down? You are going to be able to function just fine. So while not all homesteaders might think of themselves as preppers, most of them, by virtue of being producers of their own food, energy, and so forth, are kind of prepared anyway. And when you live really close to the land, you learn to be prepared for emergencies because emergencies happen. And since a lot of homesteaders live very rurally, not everyone has access to emergency services. So again, even if they don't see themselves as preppers, most homesteaders are prepared for emergencies by virtue of being homesteaders. Now, the big question is, do you have to become a homesteader if you get into emergency preparedness? The answer is no. You can absolutely have your 3 months, 6 months, 12 months of food stores, water stores, medical stores, whatever is on your prepping to-do list, and never decide to get into homesteading. For a lot of us, there are factors that would prevent us from getting into a homesteading lifestyle. I want to pause and quickly say, I know homesteading is a complicated term with a lot of baggage, but I'll get into that in a different video. In fact, some people in the prepping community aren't physically capable of being homesteaders. Disabilities and other lifestyle situations might prevent you from going off-grid or being able to work and labor in a garden or with animals. So as members of the emergency preparedness community, we can't assume that everyone's end goal is an off-grid homestead, though that has become a goal for many of the people in the emergency preparedness community. Again, if you know that there are systems and infrastructure that are fragile and very likely going to fail you, then you want to live in such a way that you are preventing your reliance on those broken systems in advance. If you're growing 50 to 60 or more percent of your everyday calories, you're not going to be as impacted if the system fails. Likewise, if you're preparing for emergencies and you have your supply of rice and beans in your basement, you are also not going to be as impacted if the system fails. Combining those two together creates a much stronger situation of survival, and not just survival, of being able to thrive in a disaster scenario. Now, what if you're someone who's new to the emergency preparedness community and the idea of an off-grid homestead sounds so foreign and so far removed from your everyday life? Can you still participate in emergency preparedness? And is there more that you can do than just stocking a lot of food? The answer is yes. This is what this channel and lots of other channels on YouTube are teaching. Again, the logical conclusion to releasing your reliance on a broken food system and power system and so forth is eventually to produce some of that yourself. But you don't have to start there or even end up there. You can absolutely have an emergency preparedness plan where you are, even if that's in the middle of a large metropolitan city. You can start by identifying the most likely emergencies that you are going to face in your area: natural disasters, human blunder disasters, and personal crisis. These are the most likely scenarios, not the zombie apocalypse and total grid down emergency forever and ever, amen, but the actual real life problems you're going to face. Prepare for those. Have your food, your water, your first aid, your sanitation, all of those things in place. Have a solid foundation. Then while you're doing that and you're building those foundations, look at how you can make your life more sustainable. I have a lot of feelings and opinions about self-reliant and self-sufficient because we are never truly those things. We are all interdependent beings and we need a web of community in order to survive. But if you are looking for a more sustainable lifestyle, start replacing non-renewable resources with renewable ones. Start figuring out how you can reuse things. Create a more systems approach to your home where you're not constantly having inputs, but rather you have things that are reusable over and over again. For example, if you learn how to can your own food at home, using those glass jars over and over and over again limits the amount of inputs you need to preserve or to store your food. Likewise, if you're able to start buying in bulk, some of that can go into long-term food storage and some of that can be used today. You can can them in your glass jars, and then you have a sort of systems loop where the only input is that bulk purchase once, twice a year, and then you're using it all year. So you're only bringing in a limited amount of trash instead of having a can of beans that you go to the grocery store and buy every week, right? So these are the sort of systems, sustainable systems that you can start adding to your everyday life that can help you be a little bit more free of a broken food system. That can help you be a little bit more prepared for any emergency you're going to face. And if you ever do decide to dip your toe into homesteading, into this producer lifestyle instead of just a consumer lifestyle, you'll have some of those skills in place. At the end of the day, it makes sense that emergency preparedness minded folks are interested in homesteading. There's a huge overlap. But it is not a requirement of being a part of the emergency preparedness system. Many of the skills that homesteaders emphasize and use on a regular basis are skills that would lend themselves to any lifestyle, particularly a lifestyle that is preparing for emergencies. So don't discount emergency preparedness if you're not interested in homesteading, and don't discount homesteading if you're not interested in emergency preparedness. They are not a concentric circle, but definitely a Venn diagram where they overlap heavily. There is a place for everyone in this community. So find your place and get started right now where you are. If you want more information, I will leave my quick start guide down below. Also, don't forget to check us out over on Instagram and the Facebook group. Everything will be located down in the description. This is National Preparedness Month, so take a step and do a thing. Do a thing today to get you one step closer to your preparedness goals. And until next video, happy prepping.